in this lecture we are going to start discussing on martensite. You know, martensite, as you know, cementite, ferrite, austenite, martensite is another phase in the steel. Before I start this lecture, let me just tell you martensite was discovered by a German scientist known as Martens. Okay, his name was R. Martens. He was a graduate student in his lab, and in one fine weekend, before the weekend, he was doing experiment with steels to study the paralytic transformations. So, to do that, he has to heat the samples inside a furnace. So, he kept a sample inside the furnace, and then before at the end of Friday, before he was going out for weekends, he hurriedly opened the furnace, and mistakenly one sample came out from the furnace and fell onto a bucket full of water, which was kept near the furnace. So, he did not look into it, he ran away, and next week on Monday he came back and he just saw the sample which is inside the water full of bucket full of water. And then what happened? He was an intelligent guy. Although he was working on this paralytic transformations, he did not throw the sample away. Most of us will think that what is there in the sample, let me just throw away, because I am not interested what will happen if I quench steel in water. But this fellow was intelligent. He took out the sample. First thing he saw, sample was very hard, that you can see from the sub. You can take a nail and make a scratch on the sample, it was not. So, he went and measured the hardness of the sample, and it was very hard. It was much harder than the normal paralytic sample. And then he went on discovering what is martensite, and the whole phase which he discovered is named after his name, that is called martensite. So, the moral of the story is that in your experiment, if you do something which is unusual, which you think is not important to you, please do not throw it away. You must judge it, you must investigate it, and if you may find interesting stuff like this, and you may be immortal like martensite or Martens, because everybody will say the name martensite, they are calling the name of Martens. So, that is what actually happens. Now, martensite is a separate phase in steel, it is not a perlite like mixture of two phases, and martensite is a very important phase. What really happens, as I discussed about the paralytic transformations, paralytic transformation depends on what? Depends on basically the diffusion of carbon. The carbon in gamma iron has to partition between alpha and cementite, then only perlite can form, because cementite contains large amount of carbon, alpha iron does not contain, and they will form like a lamellar morphology, which I have been drawing you in the last few classes, and you have got an idea about it, how to draw it. So, this partitioning of carbon will be dependent on the diffusion of carbon. So, now question is that diffusion of carbon is a time dependent process. Although diffusivity of carbon is very high at high temperatures, because it is interstitial, but it is not infinite, it has certain value, right. So, if I do an experiment in which I drop the temperature of the sample from 950 to room temperature in couple of seconds, just like what Martens has done, then what will happen? Diffusion of carbon is no longer possible, because diffusion requires certain amount of time. You are not giving the time, you are taking the sample at 950 Celsius temperature and directly putting into water. That means by that you are bringing the temperature sample from 950 to room temperature within a couple of seconds or within few seconds. So, because carbon cannot diffuse, what will happen? But gamma will remain gamma, do you think so? Answer is no, because gamma is not stable at room temperature, gamma iron is only stable at high temperatures. So, gamma has to transform something, and that something is known as martensite. So, important thing is that what I showed you at the beginning, I will go back in the slide. Important thing is that martensite is a diffusion-less transformations. That is what I have shown you here in this picture. You see here, this is a diffusion-less transformation. So, that means diffusion of carbon is not going to take place or not going to dominate the mechanism of formation of Martensite. Okay. So, Martensite is a diffusionless transformations, or it is also known as Martensite is also known as displacive transformations. It is also known as a displacive transformation. We will say you, I will tell you why. It is named after the discoverer Martens. It is a displacive transformations or diffusionless transformation, as I told you. Now, question is this: why this transformation is very important? When Martens discovered these transformations, he did not realize one thing. He thought it is unique to the iron carbon system, but that is not the case. Martensite transformation happens in non-ferrous systems, nickel based alloys. In fact, if you are intelligent enough, the same memory alloys actually depends on this Martensite transformations. The same memory effect is depends on the Martensite transformations. Only thing which will change if you look at Martensite transformation in non-ferrous alloys is how the things actually happens in minute details. Otherwise, the mechanism of transformations or displacive type transformation will remain same. Okay, how does it happens? This happens by cooperative movement of the atoms, cooperative movement of the carbon atoms. The best example what one give or one normally give in this case is very simple. Suppose you are sitting in a classroom and the chairs in the classrooms are actually lattice points, correct. Now, phase transformation means what? Structural change, large rearrangement of the atoms, that is what is called phase transformations. So, if you want to make this change in the way the chairs are arranged in a class, you can do two ways. You can allow the people sitting in the chair to move from one place to other, okay, that you can do. Then what will happen? The transformation will take place, there will be more large change of the atoms on the lattice. Otherwise, you can apply force, you can actually apply force, just like the teacher can use a stick, you can apply force and allow the students to shuffle, and that is what happens in Martensite transformations. In Martensite transformation, carbon atoms actually move a little bit in the lattice in the directions of z, x and y, and make this transformation happens. So, that is what actually call that happens because of shearing, application of shear forces. Now, I will not go into exact details of these transformations, but I will tell you few important facts. Deformation happens to accommodate the change in the shape. Okay. How does it happen? Okay, let us look at it. As you know, gamma is basically FCC phase. So, I will draw two FCC unit cell and I can show you nicely how this transformation happens side by side. So, these are my two FCC unit cell. I am now going to put atoms into it. These are my corner atoms, right. These are my corner atoms and these are my phase center atoms. Right. So, these are the corner and phase center carbon iron atoms. So, carbon atoms obviously will be sitting in the interstitial places. Now, I can apply stress, I can apply shear force like this, distort the lattice in such a way I can form this. So, let me remove some of the atoms, then you can see it very clearly. So, these atoms. So, now you can see I have generated a unit cell like this. So, what I will do is I will make it thicker so that you can see it properly. So, you can see this is the body center tetragonal unit cell. This is body center, but tetragonal is because this side and this side, these two sides have equal length, although they are looking different length, but they are equal. As you can understand, this is a diagonal, okay, face diagonal. So, face diagonal should be equal length, but this one is the side of the unit cell. So, that is why one of the axis, which is, suppose this is z axis, and this is x and this is y. So, one of the axis is elongated because of these transformations. So, what we have done? We have not asked the atoms to diffuse, we have asked the atoms that they are shuffling positions, just like a shuffling of playing cards. So, by doing that you create a unit cell which has a body center tetragonal structure, and this tetragonality is very small. You know, in a tetragonal unit cell, A is equal to A, but not equal to C, correct, or A equal to B rather, not equal to C. So, therefore, most important factor in a tetragonal unit cell is the C by A ratio, which tells you the tetragonality of the cell. Here it is very small, it is maybe 1.02 or something, very, very small. So, there is a small difference, there is a very small difference in the C, length of the C axis as compared to A axis, but this is the way the transformation happens. Now, question is this. So, that means what? We are distorting the unit cells, and this happens in like this. You have a large number of FCC unit cells sitting like this. So, this happens by flipping, okay. You flip, flip, flip. So, all the unit cell will get changed, and this can happen at the speed of sound. That is why Martensite transformation is so fast. You take the sample at 950 Celsius temperature, can change in water, immediately the steel gamma will transform to Martensites. That means the rate of transformation is just like a speed of sound inside the steel, that is very high, speed of sound is very high. The why this happens, speed of sound? Because what you need basically to flipping the cell, unit cells, you flipping the unit cells just like that from this position to this position. That is easy to understand, everybody can understand this. That is what actually lead to formation of different domains. But if you look at carefully, there are two types of deformation happens in such transformations. One which will lead to change of set or change of crystal structure rather, one which is leading. Change of crystal structure means from FCC to BCT, the way I have shown is by 1, okay, and this transformation is known as, you know, homogeneous plane strain change. This transformation is done by homogeneous plane strain. Plane strain, you understand, the strain in which one of the component, third component is not present, that is called plane strain situation. So, that means you have a plane strain situation in which the crystal structures get changed from FCC to BCC or BCT. So, and in this case what happens for the plain carbon steels, there is a 20% compression along the C axis and 20% tensile stress or tensile strain along the x and y axis. So, along the z axis there are 20% compression, it will be compressed. On the other hand, along the x and y axis there is 20% tension, 12%, let me write down. So, along 20% is the compression stress along z, but tensile stress of 12% along x and y. This is the amount of strain applied, and this strain leads to change of crystal structure. Just by flipping atoms you can change this crystal structure, correct. So, we know, but people who have investigated a lot this martensitic transformation in steel, they have found, you know, although we are changing the crystal structure by applying strain or because of shear force, there is a plane in this whole structure which will remain unrotated or undistorted, okay, even after transformations. So, this unrotated or this unrotated or unchanged or undistorted structure known as habit plane. So, let me just draw it in a nice way, although it is very difficult to do. So, this plane here, as you see here, these two you will still have rotated, they rotated this way, but this one has not undergone any rotation, transformations, any distortion. So, this is known as habit plane. This is gamma, untransformed gamma, this is also untransformed gamma, this is the Martensite. So, in the Martensite, one of the plane will remain undistorted or no change of the shape or whatever positions, that is what is known as habit plane. So, this plane does not undergo any kind of distortions. So, thus in order to keep this plane undistorted, you need certain deformation to happen, because you are already deforming the whole crystal, right. You are changing the shape of the crystal, you are changing the shape of the crystal from FCC to BCT. So, and within this Martensite, one of the plane is remain undistorted. How it is possible? That is only possible when you are having somewhere else the strain is applied to accommodate the strain because of the effect of the because of this plane, and that is can be done either by slip or twinning. Although it is very difficult for you to understand or for you to visualize, but that actually happens in the real steel, and that strain, that is what is known as to keep this unrotated crystals in the same position, we need to apply the slip or twinning. That is why you see I will show pictures also, that is why you will see lot of deformation twins in the martensitic plates, and this deformation twin is to accommodate the strain which is required to keep this plane undistorted. Well, a few important aspects before I finish this lecture, we are going to discuss more on martensite in the next lecture also. One is that the C by A ratio, which I told you, is basically depends on carbon percentage in steel. This is how it is. So, C by A is basically 1 plus 0.05 into weight percent of carbon steel. Suppose you have 1 weight percent carbon steel, for 1 weight percent carbon steel, the C by A is 1.045. That is what, there is very small difference between C by A axis. So, your carbon concentration is very low, suppose carbon concentration is 0.01 percentage or 0.05 percentage, let us calculate it, 0.01 percentage of carbon, this will be C by A is basically 1.0100045, that is nothing but 1. So, that is why for very low carbon concentration steel you produce BCC, not BCT structure, you produce BCC structure, not body center tetragonal or body center cubic structures. That is one thing you must remember. Second important thing you must remember is this, that this transformation starts with a specific temperature for a particular steel. You cannot start in any temperature. Like for perlite, the transformation starts any temperature below A1. For martensites, it starts with a temperature is known as MS temperature always. This is what is called martensitic start temperature. That depends on the carbon concentration steel, and it ends with a temperature known as MF. So, therefore, this is a temperature range in which the Martensite transformation happens in steel, and this temperature is only very low. For plain carbon steel, this about MS is about 200 degrees Celsius temperature, and if you add alloying element, this can go up little bit. So, in the next class I will give you the formula, the formula of MS temperature, which will depend on compositions of the different alloying elements in the steel. So, that is one thing. Second important thing, this transformation is athermal in nature, it is known as athermal. These are the terms you will listen in steel metallurgy. This transformation is athermal in nature. What does that mean? That means if I cool the sample below MS, suppose if I cool it somewhere there below MS, transformation will happen spontaneously as usual, but the it will not depend on any further decrease as a cooling rate or something. That is what is known as athermal, or rather I can tell you very nice way, this transformation is basically independent of time. Yes. So, if I cool it down the steel below this MS temperature somewhere here, transformation will depend independent of time. It is not dependent on time, unlike Pauling transformation. Pauling transformation depends on time, that is a rate. So, here it depends on the temperature below MS, that is all. If you cool it down below MS, it will transform. So, and if you cool it down below MF, it should basically transform fully into martensite, all the gamma grains will transform into martensite, but that does not normally happen. Okay. That is one thing we should remember, we will discuss more on this. Last thing which I would like to tell you is that this transformation, this martens transformation, martensites have two morphology. One is lath, other one is plate. This is two morphology of martensite, and these morphologies will depend on what kind of steel you are looking at it. Like this one I showed you here, you see here these are the plates in this picture. This is an optical micrograph which I am showing you here. You can see here these are the prior gamma grains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 gamma grains. You can even see the boundaries, and the martensites have formed like a tree branch or leaves of a tree. They are actually called laths of martensite. On the other hand, here you see they are plates of martensites. So, these are the two typical morphology of martensites. So, in the next class we will discuss more on martensites, and I will tell you the basic theories behind it, martensite, because martensite transformation is very important for the steel metallurgy. Thank you.